because people see that as supplementary, they don't even necessarily see it as part of the crafting system, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, like it sort of replaced the crafting system in a way, but then, as I said, people don't really see it as part of it. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess the thing is, we just have to find a way to do more things that make people feel like they have more control without actually sacrificing the like, without making it too easy to just get the best shit, which is obviously always the concern, like making sure that there's still enough room for there to be items that are significant, like that are better than other items. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of where we're at, I suppose.
The other thing, of course, being it is important that to make sure as we add more of this determinism or get towards that line, that we don't then just immediately devalue all item drops on the ground, right? Because that creates a different problem when now all of a sudden you don't really care about what you're finding, or you're only caring about normal items you're finding, or you create a different problem by doing that for sure.
And there is an argument certainly by people internally that PoE 1 got to the point of that being a problem, where you no longer cared so much about what was on the ground because you crafting would always get you something better. Yeah, like that is a concern for sure. But yeah, I guess that's kind of just our overall, just like nebulous cloud of thoughts on this matter, without really getting into too many specifics, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if you've got anything else to say about it.
Well, that being said, if we add more, we're adding something to Expedition, we don't know what it is necessarily, or what it will do to the thing, and then we're adding, what I would say, greater essences are too rare right now.
I suppose.
And what else is there in there? I guess like there's certainly room to expand on the Omen system to do more there. Of course, people would argue then they don't want that to be the core crafting system to be gated behind Ritual as opposed to core drop, which is then another consideration to make. And you get this cascading series of questions and stuff we need to answer, of which need to think about it more and look more. But yeah, certainly there is the feedback of like, the crafting is too slot machiney, is something we're listening to and we have seen, and it is, I'd say that is more towards our top 10 list of things to discuss and solve sooner than later.
Right.
I think that deterministic crafting is always something that's very sought after and popular, but I feel like I might be out of terms here, but my own personal perspective, I'll say that, is not the lack of deterministic crafting per se, it's lack of options to craft with, because the slot machine crafting, we have that in PoE 1 as well. It's called Exalted, Divining, and whatever we're doing with the items. Harvest. It's not deterministic crafting. Yeah, exactly, Harvest. It's not deterministic crafting that's lacking. It is options to do something with the actual items. Because right now you drop an item, and what you can do is annul it or exalt it, or you can pop some Chaos Orb. And the meta crafts, which are behind the Omens, that's a different topic, which we're going to tackle in a bit here. We talk about trading. But the crafting has less to do with deterministic approach, but rather giving us options to work with on an item to make us actually craft it, even if that means RNG in the next slam or something.
Right. And if that's the case, then more content will get you that, because
that will just that will solve itself over time.
Right. Because as we just add more stuff during early access, there's just going to be more and more of those kinds of crazy systems.
But we'll make sure that, like, I say over time, it's not like there's something inevitable about it for sure, but because it is a bigger problem now, we would make sure that we try and ensure that as we're adding more content, it is leaning towards adding more options there and solving these problems that people have, as opposed to just like, I will do something cool and maybe it does and maybe it doesn't. So we'll have a lot more problem solving, designing, content created by more towards solving the problems, as opposed to, when you're at a point where you have so much content, a lot of the time you can be like, what are we going to do? Let's just make something cool and awesome. Whereas here it's going to be like, let's look at problems to solve and create content that comes from that. So there's like kind of two ways of coming up with the content, and certainly this is one that will be a problem that we're looking to try and solve by doing that, for sure.
That's fair. We're not going to go too deep into it, but following up to the state of trading, I mean, obviously we have trading being in its state that it is, but there's the volatility problem of the market's economy being player-based. For now, we have a golden standard of trading divine orbs, which quite literally holds close to zero value in terms of actual player usage outside of a handful of specific unique items, and is representative of trade power in the community. And since there is no natural divine orb sink, which exalted orbs have, for example, they just continue going up, and the inflation is just rampant at this point.
So, I would have thought that if there was no divine orb sink, then the value of divines would go down rather than up. Like, presumably, if the value of divines is going up in other currency, then it's the other currency that there's too much of rather than the divines.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is like they become the golden standard, and since no one's using them, we get a higher quantity of them. And the result of it is that now, since that is the item people are using, or the currency people are pricing the item themselves, they're now, one rare, one life pair of boots with 10% movement speed now costs 50 divines if I'm going to use exaggerated examples.
So you're talking about the price in divines is going up as opposed to the price
of a divine is
the value of it is going up. Sure. Well, I mean, there's nothing I can kind of initially go into with this other than just that, like, yeah, we just have to look at this and work out what we're going to use to sync these things more. The intention with divines is that you'd sync them into making, like, if there's enough, like, things where you want to reroll mod values on, which, like, is uniques ideally. Like, the implication of that is that there aren't the uniques that people are wanting to roll to get good values on, right? I'm assuming that's the reason.
Some not enough. Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have enough unique items.
For sure,
like,
for sure.
we need a lot more. Which is another goal we have, of course. But I mean, so yes, there's not enough uniques. So there's not enough uniques to be using divine orbs for an
and of course the thing in Pee-wee 1 where things were priced and that currency can help, but we don't have anything quite like that, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's a problem. We'll just like find a way to sync them, I suppose. But ideally, if everything's working correctly, they'd be syncing themselves due to the fact that there's enough things you want to reroll values on, and like uniques that you want to reroll values on. I'm actually curious to know whether people are even really bothering with that. Like, are people actually bothering to reroll unique values?
Oh yeah, some, but not many. You won't know. Well, yeah, not many.
As for Memphis. Yeah. That's like the few main ones, I think. Like, no one's gonna pop a divine orb on a Ventur's gamble. It's like, that's literally gambling. But like in Pee-wee 1, we have an option of meta crafting DNA currencies in core divine orbs. Former exalted. It creates this natural flow, but also provides this crafting method for people to actually kind of help the state of crafting that people are looking for. Right now, they're omens, and because of this type of inflation happening, they are so far away from most players that even players that play one, I haven't bothered myself. I've played a lot, subathon and everything. Like, I haven't touched them because they're too pricey to use. Like, it's a very select few players that even engages with them because of how pricey they are, and that just separates a lot of crafting from even a larger player base.
One other point of this is it might tie into the previous discussion we had about Magic Find influencing the economy in relation to currency drops being upgraded. So I know that's one portion we talked about you're going to look at previously too. So I think these two probably tie in together here.
I don't know that I've got anything particularly like smart to say about this right now, honestly. Though that would be the
we
issue.
are at least making omens more common, so hopefully
yes, I mean
to some degree. But I think we then also need more uniques and a lot more uniques, obviously, and a lot more uniques that would have divine sinks, and then I suspect the answer also is additional sinks of currency. Yeah, I mean, I suspect it's a bit of everything here.
So we'll move on here. We have a significant amount of questions left. So I'm going to try to speed up the cadence of these a little bit here as we're about maybe halfway through, but well over halfway through the interview. So we're going to talk a little bit about state of the game and state of league mechanics here. So I'm specifically going to go into league mechanics first here. So some league mechanics, essences, strongbox, to name a few, feel a little bit like noob traps. So I was kind of hoping to hear where your guys' thoughts are in relation to some of the underutilized ones. We talked about Expedition already, so you don't necessarily have to go into it, as well as the state of Breach. Is Breach VO is notably like the one people are enjoying the most? Do you feel like that one's overtuned? And the other one, I mean, I don't know anyone who actually does strong boxes, so where do you want those and essences in particular, especially when it comes to the how often essences are not really rolling grave essences. Like, you don't really see grave essences very often. I actually saw more in the campaign than I have in any of my in-game maps. So I'm curious about kind of league mechanics as it ties into in-game in particular.
Yeah, I mean, look, we just need to do a lot of balance here, and that's really all it is. And that once again just comes down to the relative lack of testing that in-game had before launch compared to other content. So yeah, there's just a lot of balance to do here.
It was meant to be more that essences, strong boxes, and like precursor artifacts are like the things you find that you can't anticipate coming. I understand you can spec into them, that is a thing, but it's meant to be more like a thing you find that you don't know is coming, whereas the I know we refer to them all as leagues, but like let's say the ritual expedition, etc., the ones you know are coming and that you're investing into. So you have these two categories where you have the ones you are adding and investing into, and then you have the other ones that are meant to be more exciting random finds. And it's safe to say, obviously, you know, there are so many essences that finding non-greater essences isn't giving you that dopamine, especially in endgame. And finding a strong box is like anti-dopamine right now, because it just makes you feel bad, because you're like, oh, I need this, and you just want to run away. So, look, it's safe to say that those failed at achieving that goal, hence why we have to make some improvements to them for sure. But I want to make sure that there's those two layers of things, where one's the things, stuff you predict is coming, you can see the icons, you can apply them with the you know, there's the base types of the precursor tablets to apply, and then you have the things where it's like, I hope I find an essence, because it's like, I hope I get the good one that's worth, you know, way too many of those divine orbs. So yeah, having both layers is important. So yeah, and we'll continue to add ones at that upper level that get a tablet, and then we'll continue to add ones that are more of that random find excitement in the map that you don't know is coming. Because you don't want to put it all on one layer where you know everything that's coming necessarily, because then nothing is exciting. You can do exciting within that to some degree, but not always.
I mean, really it all is to say that like there are some of these that just aren't as good as the others, and we just have to improve them. But what I will say is that the breach monster density is probably a little on the high side. Like, it's actually to the point, by the way, where like we get a bunch of error messages in the logs for failing to spawn monsters in breach, because they're packed so tightly together that they don't even spawn anymore. So there's actually like there's an issue there that we have to do something
like
about.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Like
So
actual hundreds of error logs of just like cannot fail to place monster due to lack of space.
yeah. So yeah, like that there was a joke that we could release breach monster, reduce breach monster density by 20%, and the players wouldn't even see it, because it would just result in less error messages for us. So, you know, like there are actually some stuff that needs to be sorted out there. But we don't want, like, okay, what I don't want is people to feel like, oh, we're just like nerfing that into the ground or something like that. We definitely don't want to do that. But some of the other league mechanics just need some addressing to make them, you know, better. And yeah, they just need to be better. And yeah, it'll all just come down to us like experiencing and seeing if they suck, we'll improve them. And like right now, I know that yeah, Strongbox has got the most improvement in this patch, and I know Essence has got like at least some adjustment to make it a little bit less crap. And there's probably a few more adjustments.
It's more about the combat than the itemization. That's something we still need to look into.
Right. So there's just stuff like, yeah, we just need to improve all that stuff until it's good, right? Simple as that, really.
Fair enough. How do you guys feel about the progression of players entering into mapping, going from map tier 1 to you're doing tier 16s, and then into Pinnacle Boss? How do you feel like the pacing in there? To give you one reason I bring it up is in PoE 1, we have like the quest invite version of boss fights that will happen at different iterations, so you probably know where I'm going.
Yeah. So we're not really happy with how that is right now. Like, we're not happy with how the quest, I mean, the quests that effectively we give you are just like do X many of tier Y maps. And honestly, like, we can do a lot better. That's kind of a larger... It's something that I would have loved to be able to just solve instantly, but like it does need some more work. And I think there's a few different areas of this. So one of them is that, yeah, like just the way the progression feels just isn't as good as PoE1 in some way. That's kind of slightly hard to define. Like in terms of just like the feeling of like the progress you're making, just isn't quite right. So I think we need to do more. Like, there might be some changes we have to make to how the Atlas works to make that better.
Certainly want some bosses between those points.
Yeah. Like, it just needs more of a feeling of
random ones.
Yeah.
I mean, like actual ones that are still along a series of objective-driven kind of narrative-involved things where you're getting your still an end game, not pinnacle boss at tier 6 and maybe at tier 11, and you know, they're the quest versions, and you're doing those, and then maybe there's Uber versions, and I'm just rambling
there just needs to be more going on with regard to how that progression feels. So that's one element. So the next one is that the tutorialization of the end game is not really there. Like, we need to do more around this so that like it actually sort of eases you into end game a little bit better. As far as like if you're a new player, like we kind of just throw you in the deep. Like, we fixed a lot of things about the introduction to the game through the campaign, but then you get to endgame and it's kind of like we don't really do enough to kind of really ease you in there, I would say. And then I did have a third one, but I can't remember what it was now. There was something about that. Oh yeah, oh that's right. And it sort of ties in a little bit to what I was. This kind of was covered a little bit with what Mark was saying just a second ago. But like the way that you progress through the tiers, like you can go through the tiers too quickly, and then you kind of get left behind with like what rewards you should be getting. And like in order for us to fix that, we kind of need to make each tier more meaningful with regard to what you have to do there and what's going on. So there'll probably just be more there at endgame just to kind of make it feel like more of a progression and more of a more. Yeah, like, and that can include more storyline elements and more things like that. There just needs to be more, basically, just there to make that progression feel better. The game does take a bit of a turn suddenly when you get to endgame. Of like, it doesn't really feel like it. It really does feel very different from campaign to endgame. And yeah, as I said, it's just a matter of sort of easing that transition, making that a little bit better and smoothing out that more for sure.
I want to hone into 2 points here. One, because you talk about it feels like a different game, sort of a different progression at least. We have to go from campaign into action. This is a question we're going to ask Fair, but seems to be a good time to ask it now. Is that intended, and do you like that as a design principle? Because I've seen people say that they really like the campaign, and me myself, I like the difference, but I've seen people state that they really enjoy the campaign pacing, and they get to maps and they feel like it starts blasting, it's almost a different game at that point. So I think the audience would love to know how you feel about that difference.
You do actually, I mean, you do need to get to the point at some point where you feel incredibly powerful. However, I would say that there is like a bit of a switch flip right now that's kind of not quite right. Like, there's definitely something that ain't right going on there.
There's two. There is the character power side. I mean, a lot of people are getting to endgame. Excuse me. A lot of people are getting to endgame and they aren't just becoming gods all of a sudden, right? A lot of people are struggling and falling off and can't sustain maps and are dying and you know, it's not like you get to endgame and all of a sudden you're ultra powerful. But you certainly, a lot of people are getting to endgame and then are just lost as to what to do, right? Like, a lot of players really like to be told exactly, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's your next objective, here's the thing to look forward to. And something just like completes 10 tier 1 maps is not a fun objective, right? That's just like, okay, sure, I'll do that. You know, where we could do that a lot better, right? Go to this place, travel here, do this exact thing, discover this, do a tower, run this breach, you know, all these things. We can have obviously way better objectives and ones that we could still design. And you're getting your passive points for each, and you're like, okay, the next thing it wants me to do is this exact thing, not just, oh, I've completed my 10, oh, now it just wants me to complete tier 2 maps. I see, oh, I'll just keep going, sure. So there's no like, whereas the campaign's very story, it's like, go kill this boss, get here, and you got NPCs talking to you and everything, and then all of a sudden it's just, now I'm killing stuff, ticking up this ticker, and, you know, a lot of people probably aren't really getting into, based on the tutorialization, they're not really getting into the towers, the tablets, all of that stuff, and then they're just also possibly finding it a bit too hard, and they're dying, and so, yeah, it's not, is friendly to the people who, especially non-PoE1 players, it's not as friendly to them as we would want it to be at all. That being said, like, obviously, there is also the capacity at that point to just be like, all right, I'm going to change my build to do this or go to do this, and now I'm just, like, obliterating everything everywhere. And you don't have all those, like, story events breaking up your flow of gameplay. It's just, like, map, kill everything, map, kill everything, map, kill everything, which people love. But yes, for those who know how to do that, that happens too soon. And for those who don't know how to do it, they're like getting stuck in a hole and finding themselves very lost. So yeah, 2 sets of improvements. The people that are going to obliterate everything, they're going to have their fun no matter what. They'll get there a bit later, sure, if that's how you want to think about it. But it's way more important to not just have that like very much narrative-driven change in pace where all of a sudden it's just like, and it's gone. And now you're just doing, you know, kind of random stuff. You know, what am I supposed to do next kind of thing, and yeah. So yeah, there's a lot going wrong there. More content would do it, more time on it, more quests, more, you know. But again, PoE1 had a lot of this stuff, and it had so many different axes. If you didn't like one thing, you could do another. If you didn't like that, you could do another, and you could do certain things earlier or later. And we just need to get to that point where there's just more better, without overcomplicating everything.
So my last follow-up to this in-game topic, and I'll send over the guys to continue the conversation elsewhere. So you mentioned that there's a little bit of a separation from what I'm hearing about people like know how to blast, like they're going to go anyway, right? They're going to crush through and destroy it. Then you have the people that are like kind of learning the game, getting into the end game, that might like get stuck and lost. How do you feel about the, you know, 1.4 though? Then now that the game has been out of the wild, does the 1.4 though feel like it's widening that gap and punishing players who maybe are learning the game too much, but it's the people who are going to blast regardless. It doesn't matter because they're not going to be dying consistently in maps. So how do you feel about one Portal state of mapping currently, as well as XP loss still being fairly significant, even though in the previous interview was stated that you don't feel like you need to have the XP loss as much, considering you do have that one Portal defense. Right. We're in a state where we currently have both of them.
So first of all, we did discuss quite a lot about whether or not we want to go back on one Portal or not, and I think that it comes down to the fact that I think that it just would really not feel the same if like the whole death actually mattering thing. I think is actually important. Like I think we sort of decided, like, because we were talking about the Pinnacle boss thing. Obviously, the discussion came up of like, okay, should we just be allowing 6 portals everywhere? Should we be allowing checkpoints everywhere? And I think we ultimately decided, like, we really don't want to go that way if possible. So we're gonna try, like, and that's kind of where we came to. Like, well, first we'll try with this Pinnacle stuff. We'll like make sure that that's like something, because that's actually something we've got like true economic value that you need to actually preserve. And so it matters a lot more, and like the amount of time it takes you to get there and everything that matters. But I think if, like, then to me, I feel like to be a game, you have to have some level of failure being possible. And the 6 portal thing, like, it really just does, to me, it just never really led to a situation where you felt like you really could fail in the same way. So yeah, I'm not really a fan. I much prefer the whole like one death thing. As for XP penalty, part of the thinking around that is that, like, it's kind of keeping you in the place where you're supposed to be, as far as, like, if you're dying all the time, then you're probably not ready to keep going up the power curve. But I mean, maybe that's like the wrong way to look at it. I'm not sure. I don't know if you've got any different thoughts about this.
If you're dying, right now there's too many penalty axes. So if you are dying all the time, you're not going to get maps, and thus you're not going to go anywhere. And you also, it's kind of like an add insult to injury. You're also now just not leveling. So
but you do have to have it. So
I agree. I think there's a few axes, and I think they're just a bit too severe when all combined together. Combined with, I also think that the very start of maps is just too difficult. Like, I think we should ease into that a little bit. So bring that down a bit and then ramp the difficulty up. Well, I mean, we could hit the same spot, but I think it's just a little bit, and I think that's mostly due to the number of rare monsters and the obviously monster combinations, because you can kind of avoid bosses, and like, I don't mind. I think that's a little bit of a different situation, but you get all these monsters you haven't seen in ages, and they all combine together, and so you have to kind of, like, generally when you go into those areas, you learn what the monsters are doing and how they're combining, and then you maybe die once or twice if you're not, ultra powerful. And then you get into maps and you're immediately sprung on like heaps of different monster permutations, and they're doing things and you're getting killed all the time, and there's a lot to learn. You do the next map and you're like, well, I can't take the learnings of that previous map and apply it to this next map because it's a whole different set of monsters. So there's nothing to really take from one map to another, aside from just like maybe playing a bit more carefully, or like, not being so overzealous and whatnot. So it's just a little bit difficult there, and I suspect we need to bring down the difficulty a little bit and ease people into it a bit more. But I need to think about it certainly a lot more, and actually get a little bit more analytics on it as well, and actually see what the actual problems are. And again, I read a lot more feedback, honestly.
Sure.
It would be nice if there was a way to deal with the fact that, so I mean, like, okay, the penalty for not clearing a map, we remove the extra content from the map, and it would be nice if you could just spend another map and still be able to do that content. But unfortunately, that isn't possible. Like, so for example, if you failed on the boss, then you just spend another map and then you can fight the boss again and do that whole thing, right? Like, that would be nice if that was the case. But unfortunately, we can't do that because it would open up too many economic abuse things where, like, you fail the map intentionally because you want to farm the items to the rest of the area. So it's very difficult for us to come up with a solution, like, because I really would prefer that, honestly. It'd be nice if we were able to come up with a solution that would allow you to redo content by spending an extra map without having to, like, have all the problems that being able to rerun a single map would actually cause. So, yeah, like, I sort of wish I could come up with a
I personally want to keep the one portal and adjust the other axes and see how that plays out before compromising on the one portal. But yeah, It's a bit tricky. It certainly is the case. We have discussed this so many times. Like, it's come up, and before we released it, it's like people are going to definitely complain about this, and we're like, we know, and we haven't found the solution.
It's a common question. Had to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So now there's a lot more people. Well, now there's a lot more feedback and a lot more people. It's much easier for us to get the specifics on how we could get it right, like for sure. Not to say it's now trivial to do. It's still hard. But there's a lot more information there for us to be able to, you know, take less of a shot in the dark, so to speak. So I would expect some changes.
We'll have to wait and see. So we're cutting it a little bit tight here. We have a lot of questions. So I'm going to try to speed run as much as we can, because there is a section that I care very much about. It's minions. So let's get there, okay? Let's just dive into it. We're going to talk about ailments, damage per time effects. We're talking about ignite on adults, like poison, for example. So the question is, what's your feelings around it? On a hit, as it scales on hit, opposed to its dot scaling, which we have a bit different scaling in PoE 1. Now it's based off the actual hit you're doing, which was taken away from PoE 1. So what's the reasoning behind this? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I can't remember the history of PoE 1 too much, but I understand the difference. I mean, I personally prefer that the heavier the hit, the more the dot. The issue we run into is, of course, then you just get... It's either balanced around the extremely hard heavy hitters, and everything else can't really scale them currently. And then you get into the thing, or you go down the PoE 1 route where a bunch of skills have ailment penalties and a bunch of them don't, and that more normalizes it so you can play any skill to do the dots. I would say I prefer the asymmetry, where it's like, here are the skills that are generally better. The problem is, I'd say that's, you know, again, I mentioned the bleed Hammer of the Gods thing earlier, where it's just now the bleed one-shots the monster, and, you know, you get into that kind of situation, so there's a whole bunch of balance here to get right, but I don't want it to just be like, well, implicitly, I don't want it to be like you can play any build and bleed. You should have to have some combinations, and there's more mechanics and more things we need to add, or more unique items and all of that stuff.
Specifically,
It's tricky because, generally speaking, when we're doing first pass balance things, I really like to avoid... I like the bumpiness, where we've got like different skills being better at different things. And I really don't like it when we end up in a situation like, for example, in... You know, you've got the whole like damage effectiveness on spells in PoE 1, and it's like, this is a thing you do to solve a balance problem. Like, this is unrelated to ailments, but like I'm saying, it's just another example of one of those things where you like, oh, I've got this problem where these skills are sort of all out of line with each other, and so we have to do this like sledgehammer to it. We're like, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna normalize everything, and I kind of hate that type of thing, and I really try to avoid it wherever we can. And it's kind of one of those annoying things where, as games get like, as you do more and more of this balance stuff, you kind of end up with more of these kind of normalization procedures that go on, and so it's nice if we can find ways to avoid it if we can. And that's kind of why I like to try and pitch everything. Like, we started with in PoE 2 with a lot of things having, like, going back on a lot of those sort of normalization procedures we did from PoE 1, and ideally we would be able to find different solutions that don't involve having to do that. You know, yeah, it's one of those things that I worry we might still having to do some of that stuff in order to fix problems. But ideally we can avoid it, and that's kind of why we went back on some of those normalization procedures for PoE 2.
So one point, just real quick here about bleeding in particular, because you're talking about bleeding. Since you can't bleed on energy shield, bleeding style element builds are basically disabled against energy shield types of mobs. So feelings on that, is that something that's just like, well, that's as intended?
Bleed on energy.
If you're running like unless you're breaking the energy shield, your hit's not going to apply bleed on the energy shield, for instance.
I thought that
I don't think that's even true.
I thought that the thing with bleed was it's supposed to bypass energy shield.
It does, but you can only apply a bleed if the hit deals damage to the life pool. So if you're playing CI, you're essentially immune to poison, care, and bleed.
I will take your word for that, but if that is how that works, that is not how that is meant to work.
Yeah.
I only say this because yesterday I heard someone upstairs talking about this and going like, people are just wrong. You can apply bleed to energy shield. Look, and then I was like, okay, but I'll confirm that after this. And look, if that is how that works, that is like...
Bleed was actually supposed to be like an anti-mage mechanic, not a, like, you know, like as in like you could bleed someone past their energy shield, so
well,
like that was kind of the idea
right,
there.
and I'm wrong, then Quinn has thrown me under the bus. Because I asked that question from him. So.
Well, again,
we could easily be wrong. Like, it's amazing how...
It also could
yeah.
be that it has been changed internally and not yet externally. That is another thing also. And, like, someone may have fixed this 2 weeks ago and we never got it live or something. Who knows? Like, I'll look into it. It's not meant to work that way.
All right, moving forward here, we are on elements. And now we are into ascendancy swapping is the next topic here. So these are kind of going back to conversations we've had previously in interviews where you guys were debating it and you wanted to see after the launch of the game, where do we stand?
Personally, I still like not being able to swap. I know, no one will like that hot take. And there are plenty of other developers here, and I remember even pitching it, and I was like, is this your hill to die on? Is this what you believe? But that being said, I still prefer that decision being ultra important, and I prefer that decision being locked in. But it's one of those ones that's really hard to rationalize why it's better one way or the other, to be honest. Like, it wouldn't be that hard to actually convince me the otherwise, because it is not the hill I would die on, that's for damn sure. So I don't know, it's like, I have my preference. I don't know why I have my preference that way. I guess I just like more decisions, especially about characters, to be a bit more final, but that being said, we have re-speccing of everything else. I don't know. I don't really know where we're going to go with this one, aside from, like, sure, we'll reevaluate it and we'll see. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of developers that feel very strongly, and then we feel one way and we discuss it with those people, and we kind of see where we land. But, like, we're not going to ignore, you know, the opinions and preferences of our team either, our design team and whatnot, you know, just to overrule it just because. That being said, I sit on one side of that fence for sure, that probably the majority of players do not sit on.
I mean, I'm 55% in favor of re-rolling ascendancies personally, so it's very hard for me to argue against it when I would say that I would allow it, but I'm also, once again, like, other people on the team feel more strongly.
I mean, what I would be open to is, like, I understand you have to go online to have a look at what those ascendancy classes are, but I would be more open to having in-game things where when you're creating your character, you know, I don't want to not in a way that wouldn't overcomplicate it for new players, where they're like, oh, what are all these, what are ascendancy classes? What's going on here?
I'm not really in favor of that argument personally, because I don't think that you are equipped at the point of the start of the game to be able to assess what the ascendancy classes are. So, kind of does. I don't really think that really holds.
Well, it's less for new players, I guess. But then again, experienced players already know how to get that information. So, I don't know the right solution there, honestly. But you can bet it's going to come up in discussions another, you know, 55 times this year, so.
Sure, we're just at the start of it. Again, we don't want to take too much of your time, so we just keep up with speed running some questions. And the first one here is, given the current TK, the time to kill, of pinnacle bosses by many of the stronger builds in the game, I guess the question is, what is the goal for build power? Is one-shotting pinnacle bosses an intended power level for builds, or is it the intended design something else?
This should definitely not be the case that the first time you fight a pinnacle boss that you one-shot it. Like, that's the kind of thing that maybe you can get to after crazy amounts of, like, extra items being found, but you shouldn't be doing that the first time you play it. So yeah, it's not right. And that's just, you know, yeah, there's some builds that are outrageous. And, you know, yeah, we want to actually make it so the boss can use their abilities. That's why we spend a bunch of time making them, after all.
Exactly.
So, you know, yeah.
When you first get there and you're kind of relatively equipped for it, it shouldn't, like, it should still be a 1 to 3 minute fight kind of thing.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about 1 minute of emerging. I'm talking 1 to 3 minutes of actual skill combat.
Okay. Oh, that's a good time of reference we can use. Moving forward, knowing that's the kind of the goal of going for the vision. Next question is, given the difficulty of requirements to get the 7th and 8th ascendancy points, is this intended to be something that not all average players can acquire?
We definitely wanted the final ascendancy points to be something that was like a significant, like, goal. Like, this is an awesome, you know, like it's supposed to be quite a thing when you get the last 2 points. Yeah. I mean, as for an average player versus not, that's kind of hard to answer. I mean, I don't know if the average player gets halfway through maps really. So, like, yeah, it sort of depends on the definition. But we wanted it to be a big thing that you get.
So, map clear conditions, talking about that for a moment. Clearing rare mobs are effectively like the only real map clear condition at the moment. Is that the plan to continue that going forward, or is this sort of one of many conditions and is a placeholder, or how do you guys feel about the map clear condition being strictly rare mob cleared?
I suspect as we get to answering the exact same thing we talked about before with the more objective-driven and learning and tutorialization, we'll probably expand on that. The ideal world is there'd be a whole, a nice, cool set of different things you're doing in each map that isn't just killing all the res, but they're actually a surprisingly large amount of work to do those and to do them well. Otherwise, you just end up with this thing where it's like, oh, I like this one, but these other 4 are terrible.
You don't want bad ones of these. And killing the monsters is at least something that you already want to do. So that's kind of part of the reason why we went with that in the end.
So
yeah, there's certainly more work. Sorry, go.
No, okay. So the Atlas tree currently is gated basically behind Pinnacle Boss progression. Kind of the same type of question as in clear conditions. Is this going to be mandated in the same moving forward, or are you guys looking to add in more iterations of progression in the Atlas tree outside of Pinnacle Boss quick?
We did discuss changing how the core of the Atlas progression is, but as for the actual Pinnacle, as for the individual league trees, I think we were still keen to sort of have that be the kind of extra stuff you really get at the end of that
to get
thing.
The Pinnacle Boss's tree, it should be killing the Pinnacle Boss. We want to keep that for sure.
Sure.
And for each of the contents. But yeah, I want to upgrade the core Atlas tree for sure. I think it's quite boring and flat right now. Not a lot going on there, and part of that is to do with as we add more content, it will make it more interesting, but there's certainly a better job we can do of that. And how you acquire the points, again, getting away from that grind and getting into more like, all right, like do this 2 points, do this 2 points, do this 2 points, not grind this 2 points, grind this 2 points for the actual core tree. For the sub trees, for the leagues, yeah, I actually do like them being behind that, but ideally each league would then have its own meta system within it to amplify itself in some way, which we don't currently have a lot of, so it's something we'd be looking into in the future when we're upgrading the existing content as opposed to adding new content.
Alright. I bet all of our chats have been spamming this, so I'm just gonna throw it out right away. Map tab when?
That should be reasonably soon, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it's an as soon as possible thing. We've got people working on it right now. As soon as it's done, you'll have it. Like, it was not a, yeah.
It'll be done soon.
We wanted it there for release. Yeah.
Done soon.
Let's go to tech questions, optimizations, and bugs, kind of a little category we have, and then I'm going to do some mini questions for you guys as well. Appreciate you guys taking the time. I know we're going a little bit above the time here. First question we have is something we talked about in a previous interview, I believe, with the system. It was predictive network mode and lockstep. What is the reasoning behind this specific topic, or what's your take on it, seeing how people are performing right now with this?
I actually haven't hugely investigated this, to be honest. I don't know if you've got any more information about that.
I do not.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have lockstep right now.
Oh, the proof is just not. Yeah, it's not
we
that.
only have lockstep currently.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we just need to fix that, right? Yeah. Like, honestly, the people who would be working on that have not even come back from break yet, so that's just not something that that we've got. But yeah, we do need to get that working. I think it was just disabled mostly out of caution, right? Because we just expected lots of shit would be broken.
There was a few things. I can't remember exactly what they were.
But yeah, we need to get it
There were
sorted.
some things that didn't work in that mode, and we had to re-engineer them.
Yeah.
And yeah, no time.
Yeah, we'll get to it though.
Okay, couple just real quick optimization type of questions here. Terrain obstruction is something that has been helped a little bit in this recent, we saw in the video there, you guys were talking about making it a little bit more clear and transparent. But some things like trees, for instance, covering your screen from the overhead, etc. Do you have any feelings on how terrain obstruction is currently in the game, and is there any plans around making this a little bit?
It's just a matter of individual work on each individual thing, just like looking at each doodad and being like, yeah, what the bounds need to be, that kind of thing.
That some trees don't fade out until you're like intersecting with them.
Sure.
And it's annoying because you get more, and the faster you move, the more you will be obscured. And so there's some timing changes, there's some proximity changes. There's
just a matter of individual balance
of
things.
To be addressed.
There's still some areas.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then as far as optimization is concerned, I mean, we'll just keep working on it, right? I mean, in the background, you've got the engine guys working on things. There is one very annoying crash that is very, very hard to debug that happens on, I believe it only happens on NVIDIA cards. where like after sort of an hour or an hour and a half kind of thing, you'll get a crash to desktop, and it's been very, very difficult to track down, and we're adding more debug stuff. In fact, I think there'll be a patch. If we can't work it out internally, we'll actually probably eventually make a patch where we tell people to like turn on a command line flag that will enable extra debug information, because the thing that will allow us to debug this does reduce frame rates by like 5%. So we might actually ask people to like, hey, turn this on until we find the problem, and then it'll reduce your frame rates a little bit, but it'll help us track it down. And then once we've got that, then we should be able to work it out. Effectively, they're like concurrency bugs within the GPU. But annoyingly, we were also told that the next version, like NVIDIA told us that the next version of the NVIDIA driver does make the crash go away. But then they also said that they didn't know why that was the case. So I don't know if we can 100% rely on that either. So yeah, there's something weird going on that's like quite hard to track down going on here. And hopefully we can work it out soon. But yeah, we just need we need more debug information. It's very hard to track down, unfortunately. And it's kind of annoying how it takes so long to reproduce. Like there's even a thing where like the first hour after we do a restart patch, we don't get any of those crashes because it literally takes more than an hour to reproduce. And then after that, they start coming in. So there's like something weird going on there. But it's the most common crash, and like we're just like really annoyed. It's just very annoying to deal with.
Thanks for the answer, because that was a very common question. People were talking about crashes and wanted to ask you about it. So good answer there. At this portion, all we have left is some minion questions from Ghazi, just a couple of them, and then we're into the rapid fire portion, and then we're pretty much done. So try to get you out of here in 10, 15 minutes. Go on, Ghazi.
Sure.
Let's just dive into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about Hodor, minion body blocking in doorways. Let me just add the word "come on."
So,
Solutions,
I
please.
mean, yeah, like this is something that we need to work out a better solution for. Like what I can say is that, okay, so people will immediately say, oh, just make it so that minions can just walk through each other. And it's like, we've done that and it sucked. And it doesn't just suck because of that it looks bad or something. Like it sucks to actually, like, it actually just makes the minions play worse. So we need to find another solution that's like smarter somehow that like fixes that issue. One thing we are planning on doing, just as an initial test that we've got, I believe someone's doing at the moment, is at least making it so that when minions die due to distance, that they respawn immediately near your character rather than it waiting till the next refresh. So like that'll at least maybe help a bit, but I don't know if it's like the full solution by any means. But there's something we have to do around this, but I honestly don't know quite what it is yet. And as I said, like all of the obvious solutions, as you might say, we have tried and they weren't great. So it really is going to take something a little bit more complicated to do to like work out what we're doing here. But yes, I appreciate the issue for sure. Like I'm not saying that we're not going to do something about it because we have to. I'm just saying that like it's not clear yet what that is. And at the very least, in the meantime, we can do the respawn instantly upon timing on the distancing out, which will help a little bit maybe. But yeah, more needs to be done.
It's one of the big problems people complain about with
for sure.
For them rubber banding to you, resurrecting is much better than them dying, because that is part of my other question I had here. However, in PoE 1, there is a feature added, a modifier on well-telegraphed boss abilities that you're supposed to, as a player, dodge, where your minions can't because you can't control them, so they do less damage to them. PoE 2 doesn't seem to have this based on the data mine I've been checking, which seems to be that they're just expected to literally just die, and then you have to sit there and wait for them to resurrect. What's the reasoning for not giving us convocation, which would also assist in the whole minion body blocking doorways and tight corridors?
Are there not minion things in the AI? We did do some of that.
Not that I've seen.
This I can't remember exactly an AI.
So no, I mean the damage.
From a damage perspective, not hugely, no. We were tinkering around with this whole expectation of like how often, if you have like no investment and all this, how often are your minions supposed to be permanent minions, supposed to be dead versus alive, and then what are the things you can do to keep them alive? Because it was meant to be more in order to have your minions, otherwise they're never dead, right? They're permanently alive, and then the DPS is you just running around doing whatever you're doing.
That is really the issue, just to be clear, is that if we make it so that boss abilities aren't killing your minions, then that means that that would effectively mean your minions would just never die. And so then what's the...
It was meant to be more of active, what are you doing to keep them alive actively? Sure. And we haven't got that right. Like, for sure, we haven't got that right. So like I
'Cause
guess
it's really
bone
hard
offering was
to-
meant to be one of those examples of like boss slams coming, and then but also then you got a multi-thread. You got about how do I survive and how do I do this at the same time. So there's certainly something going wrong there where we haven't, and I believe there's probably still a lot of boss abilities that just haven't been tuned correctly with respect to, you know, again how often they're killing certain minions versus not. Because there will be things I'm assuming that are just completely unavoidable and they just wipe out your entire minion thing, and then it's like, well, what was I even supposed to do? So. The problem is, as soon as you get into this build, the level of like detail that you have to do, where you not only have to, sure, there might be some system change, and it's easy to probably do a cop out that's just like, whatever. You know, it's actually the right answer is to go through every single boss and test them, and go through monsters and go through mods, and like it's a huge amount of detail, and it takes quite a long time. We have people like kind of actively providing that more specific feedback, and we are iterating on it. But there's still certainly a handful of things we need to do. Otherwise, well, I'd say the blocking the doorways is a more catastrophic problem for sure. Like where they just like can't get through, and they're like running off screen and them dying. So like we're focusing more on that stuff first, and then we'll probably get back to the boss specific balance with respect to how often certain skills are just wiping out all your minions and you know all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the idea that the bosses are supposed to kill. The problem is when a boss uses a damage over time effect on them, they kill a bunch of them, your timer starts ticking, and then the dot kills the next one, it resets, and then it kills the next one, it resets.
Yeah.
You just have to wait for all of them to die, and now you're sitting there doing nothing. You feel like you're in a wheelchair, not able to run around. But an instant use convocation could be a solution to that, which would also help with the whole body blocking. A lot of people have been spamming me about make them give us convocation, and I'm in that category as well. But moving on to the other question, to not waste too much time, and that is a very interesting question. What is the reasoning behind making the minion's movement speed a direct replicator copy of what you have as a player, including when you get a minion movement speed debuff reduction on yourself?
So me and Mark were actually quite surprised to learn that when you get a debuff on your character, that it causes your minions to slow down.
Yeah, it's not intended.
That was not intentional, and so we'll just fix it.
We'll just change
Yeah,
that.
we'll just fix it. That was not a thing we even realized was the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next one is tooltip is a bit wonky with the minions, with it being incorrect in cases, especially accuracy actually being very wildly off, where it says you have a 100% chance to hit, and it's not hitting, and then the tooltip is missing altogether on things like rating spirits. And sometimes when you change a gem on an unrelated ability, suddenly your tooltip on your damaged minions is also changing randomly. Is this something
That
you've
sounds
tracked,
like
or?
a bug to me.
Yeah, we'll fix that as soon as.
I just need to look into what's
Our
going on.
developer responsible, well, they might be back today, but our developer responsible for that has still been on holiday, so as soon as they're back, they'll get onto fixing them.
Yeah. There was quite a lot of rushed, like description stuff happening right at the end of development there. So I'm sure there's even more stuff that's wrong than that, just like with that stuff.
I'm surprised that tooltip stuff is as good as it is, given, like, I remember 2 weeks before release, I was like, this is a dead feature, like, it may as well not exist. And then all of a sudden it was at least something that I was like, okay, that's a pretty good effort on what they did. So there's just more to do though, of course.
I got plenty more other minion questions, but I'm just gonna go with the one that's been spammed the most, and that's Spectre's Web.
So fairly soon. It took more work than we expected actually. Like there was just a lot of there was a lot of specific shit we have to do, but it's not too far away.
Well, the designers have to go through, all the monster designers have to go through and make spectrable versions of every monster, which in PoE 1 was a lot easier, and in PoE 2 there is so much more manual designer-based scripting on like a monster-to-monster basis that we have to like take out all of that random stuff to do with dialogue and like, because you don't want to all of a sudden like have a spectre come out and then you're like, it dies and your character says some random thing, and because all of a sudden now your character's just spamming random dialogue all the time, and like.
But there was even stuff that's kind of stupid where it's like, oh, the idle animation of this monster is loud, and so if you've got it as a spectre, then like it makes it annoying, and like just there's all sorts of random stuff that happens when you turn things into a spectre that's kind of not obvious.
Effectively, every single monster has to be.
Yes,
that is
still,
true. Well, we don't want to repeat those same problems, right? So ideally, the audio team actually gets time to do proper spectre mastering, so to speak, on all the audio for all the monsters. But no, I believe the designers are almost done with their part, which means it's then just audio and then a whole metric, which has been happening in parallel, but a whole metric ton of balance testing to make sure that we're not just, you know, I mean, which is a lot, by the way. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong with these things.
Well, balancing the spirit cost of each of these.
Yeah, but then testing it with every array of support gems, and you know, monsters can be set up kind of jank, where you're like, yeah, that's like a projectile, but like it's using some other skill that's kind of actually like triggering projectiles, and so if you actually put, you know, multiple projectiles on it, it might not affect it in the way you think. And like from a damage perception of like, I take less damage from projectiles, that's fine. From an avoidance perspective, it's fine. But then there'll be some weird thing where, because, you know, with like player skills, we actually code every single skill, like, you know, exactly here's how it's meant to work. It's like quite intricate. With monsters, we're cowboys. We just go ballistic and just set them up to make sure that they're good. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh right, we had to make a specter of this. Okay, well, and then you have to hack a bunch of stuff together. But you know, it's also what allows us to be able to make a ludicrous amount of monsters all the time. But yes, now you have to make specters of all of them, which is almost done. We've almost caught up to where we were, so I'd say, yeah, soon, whatever soon means.
Not too.
All right, so we are in the last portion. 5 minutes, some rapid fires. We'll fit whatever we can in within the 5 minutes, and we're done at this point. Thanks for going 10 minutes over at this point. So I'm just going to pick random ones here. Search feature on an atlas, so you can search like...
Yep, we definitely should have that. This was something we even said before we even released, but we just never had time to do. But yeah, we'll do that at some point.
Got it.
On the list.
Tornado Bird in the game for Ultimatum is the hardest boss in the entire game, in my opinion, personally. Is you have
I believe that's resolved, and 011 does have changes to that one. I believe.
He's ridiculous.
I saw it on the list. I saw it on the patch notes.
All right.
Yeah, I just can't remember what skills. Yeah,
it was the tornado. Like it was more avoidable. Or something. There was some stuff. It is in the specific boss balance that got addressed in this.
We'll see after the patch, and then we'll make more changes if needed. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So auction house. We're getting spammed about this all the time. You've answered many questions. How are you guys feeling about auction house or in-game purchasing or buyout on the website or anything related to that?
I mean, I've talked about what we could do before. I don't have anything to announce right now. Sure. Yeah, we'll discuss this more. I'm sure this will come up again.
Sure. Yeah. Accessibility question. Red-green color blindness is the most common in the world, it's my understanding. Yeah. Obviously, red on green is a very common thing within Path of Exile 2, specifically in Ultimatum, which is a mandated ascendancy trial. So, for any plans around accessibility features for this?
Well, effectively, that's usually what we do for this stuff. Is rather than having a mode for it, we tend to just make sure that each thing, like we test it on people who are actually colorblind. So I just need to get probably Reese to just test all the stuff specifically, because I know he read green colorblind, and just make sure that they're actually distinguishable. I generally prefer rather than having modes for it to like have
people with that color blindness highlighting the area. So Ultimatum, as you said, being bad gives us a target, and we'll start someone there.
Yeah.
Sure. Speaking of visibility, rare and blue mobs. Can't really tell they're rare and blue mobs, or magic mobs, I should say. There's no highlight on them like in PoE 1. You know, there's like a little highlight. So you can't.
So the intention is that you can tell when a monster is based on the effect of the actual thing itself. There might be some cases where we're just not being successful in that regard, and so we just need to improve it.
We're going to do more there, and we are going to try some things that give them magic and rare identifiers that aren't. The glows just really took you out of the, like when you're in a dark dungeon and you're exploring it, like just,
and honestly,
what the heck is this glowing beacon of light over here?
I just wish Fresnel glow was just banned in games generally. Like it's just everyone just relies on it. Like, oh, we need to make this more visible. Add a Fresnel glow to it. Like it's just this freaking it's a cancer in games generally. So this is just a random side rant from me, but I just hate the fact that everyone lazily goes to Fresnel glow and freaking everything.
Fair enough. Last question related to visuals. So visual effects in co-op can be very difficult. You know, you got people standing, lots of shit around. Any opinions on toggling other people's visual effects, etc.?
I don't want to add an option like that, but there is probably more we can do automatically for that kind of stuff.
There'll be some engine-based things we can do.
Yeah, there will be. There's probably more we can do, and just like that. But in my opinion, it should be automatic, and like you shouldn't even really be thinking about it. It should just happen. Like I'm not a fan of just like, oh, turn off all the effects. Like I'm just, kind of lame.
Fair enough. Disenchanting flasks for quality. They're one of the things you can't salvage in the game currently in order to get like the quality baubles back that you'll be able to do on flasks.
Right.
Is this intended?
Is there really any reason why we shouldn't do that? I know you were like, oh, it's because it doesn't thematically fit with a hammer on a bench. Just smash the glass.
I mean, I think that's why it is, but
Yeah.
like, I have nothing against adding it.
Yeah. We can probably change that, right? Like
I
just
think it
don't-
was more like, let's do something interesting for Flask salvaging and crafting later and save that, but we can add it for now.
We should just add
It's
it.
fine,
I
yeah.
have no problem
Yeah.
adding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
Check.
should probably nerf the drop rate of flasks slightly. High levels. That's just a random note that I was thinking about yesterday as I was picking up tons of flasks. Random side note, but
We've almost got all of them. Checkpoints and maps in order to backtrack in maps. How do you feel about that?
So not for resurrecting
yeah,
purposes,
just for
fast
just for
travel
fast travel.
purposes.
It's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
I'd have to think a little bit about how exactly how we would position those. I'm not against it necessarily. I guess the feeling is that there's not so many like objectives in maps in the same way.
When you do
but they
those
kind of-
linear maps
yeah,
and you
yeah.
missed a rare monster,
Yeah,
you want to
No, you're right.
go play something else for a while.
You're right. But so yeah, we should probably do something about this, but I don't have an exact understanding of what we'd need to do perfectly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the table, however. Okay. Being able to see gems without cutting. Currently, like you got to cut the gem to look at the list of skills.
I mean, I don't really have anything against it, but where the hell does the option go? I'll think about that. I'm not really against that.
Yeah.
Maybe on the G
Yeah.
button, top, click at all skills. opens
Yeah,
up the menu.
maybe. Yeah,
Something?
maybe.
Alright.
Maybe.
Gambler in the hideout. We have all the other vendors, but we don't have like a gambler in the hideout. For instance, like Alva
The
normally does
reason
this.
for that, what was there was something very broken at the end, and we quickly turned it off. But I think we just need to fix one thing and then turn it back on. There was something very bad exploitation tier, and so we were just like disable. It's like 10 minutes until deployment kind of thing.
4 left,
fix
and
it.
we got through all of them. Okay, so
Yeah.
Venom Quest is currently the only one that you can't reselect the reward. So, for instance, you can reselect like the Titan Dome with the Life Flask for the Charm Duration. You can't select from like Chaos to Attributes or whatever. Any opinions on keeping that permanent, or can we reselect?
I
that
want
as
to
a-
add a way to change that,
Yeah.
which I know people might be like, well, hold on, then why don't you want to allow a way to change the sentences? And the answer is, I don't know. That's just how I feel. But
We'll allow you to change it.
I might feel differently later. But yes, I do want to add a way to change that for sure.
Okay, movement speed on boots. Any feelings about having them be implicit, or I mean, basically movement speed mandatory on boots, or else you're really slowed down. So, how you guys feel about moving movement speed to implicits, or do you have any feelings on movement speed on boots?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a problem to have a mod that's really, really valuable on an item that you definitely want to go for. Like, boots is certainly the case where that's like the most extreme, but I don't necessarily think it's a problem as such. So, you know, like, I personally don't have a problem with it, but I don't know if you feel differently.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like having it that like, yeah, I think it's good.
I mean,
physical
like
on a weapon.
if you added move speed implicitly to boots, would you then be like, okay, well, like IPD on weapons, like you start to get into funny territory in some sense, right? We're like, you know, so anyway, that's kind of our feeling on it.
Last two, UI customization options. Is that potential?
I mean, you'd have to be more specific.
I think people just want
In
to be able to-
general, no. Like,
Yeah.
if you're looking at like,
Like we're not going to be World of Warcraft like
Yeah.
like UI mod type there, but yeah, like if there's something specific, then you're like, I wish we could do this. Then maybe we would think about it. It's just a question of
Sure.
what it
More
is.
of a generic
Yeah.
question I was getting. Okay,
Yeah,
last
yeah.
one, boys. State of co-op and body blocking. Body blocking, you're with co-op here.
I think it's
there's something not right about it.
there's
but-
something not right about it. I agree, but I do think you do need it to make things feel more physical. But there is something not right about it. But there shouldn't be, considering that players are actually. No, because you know what it is? It's because we changed really, really close to the end of development the size of the player instead of changing the size of all the monsters. And I think that probably results in like a situation. But yeah, but there's something not right about it. But I don't want to just completely remove it. We might end up with a solution where like the size of a player to other players is different than what the size is to other monsters or something like that in order to kind of like ease it. I suspect we'll do something along those lines. So yeah, I'll that is it. It wasn't really on my radar, I have to admit, but we should do something about this. Yes.
And you'll forgive me for asking one last question that I'm curious about myself. In terms of microtransactions coming from PoE 1 to PoE 2, do we have any cadence or quantity or any information we can give them when we're going to be seeing more of our previous purchases?
Well, the main thing is that by the time we go out of early access, we have to have all of them. As for the like rate at which they come through, I mean, look, we'll try and get as many as we can and done in the near future. I honestly like. This is so the rigging team are like busy doing that, and I haven't paid enough attention to them. I need to go catch up with them and ask them, hey, how's that job going that I
No,
see you going on? So, you know.
It's probably it turned into more work than we initially anticipated, for sure. There's like a whole bunch of effects that don't translate one to one, so there's a lot of departments that have to do a lot of work. They are tuning through it. That being said, like, you know, it was certainly more complicated before when we were in that last like several month or 3-4 month like kind of lead up to release, and it was kind of like, okay, we need to have all hands on deck getting certain game content done, and yeah, we generally prioritize gameplay over microtransactions when, especially in those kind of moments. And so now it's going to ease up a bit, and we can allocate some resources, a bit more resources there to get more of them ported across. But yeah, it did end up being a little more work than we actually anticipated. It's not just like a copy-paste job and it's done. Some things have to be like kind of re-authored to actually work in one over the other. Mostly due to like lighting, I suppose, really is what is the big difference.
Yeah, so I don't have an immediate cadence for you, but yeah, we should start getting them coming out, like rolling out relatively soon.
All right, and I think that pretty much wraps it. I mean, we're getting spammed about Path of Exile 1's 3.26, but unless you want to talk about, you know...
Bit of a long topic to get into at the moment.
Yeah, so I figured I'd just throw it out there, but that's it. Guys, you want to wrap it up?
All right, excellent.
Let's just say thank you for coming. And, you know, it always happens. We say 1.5 hour. It always goes above. And we very much appreciate you guys' time. And sorry for going so long. But pleasure having you guys on. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And can't wait for the patch notes. And we'll see you guys very soon then.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you later.
I want to say thank you also. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Sorry it was 20 minutes extra, but...
No problem,
we don't have a clock in here. You understand? You could have said it was the right amount of time, and we wouldn't know.
Oh man, I missed my last.
We don't know how long it's been.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Go.
We're back on camera and everything there too. All right. Holy moly. All right, chat. Sorry, we tried, guys. Look, we had 70-something plus questions. We went over the allotted time that we had. We did our best to get all of your guys' questions. I know we missed some of them that you guys wanted to talk about. We did literally the best we can. I know there's tons of specific questions you said, well, Hunt, you're going to ask about the Huntress or the Druid, et cetera, et cetera. We did what we could. So appreciate y'all watching. Thanks to GGG for the opportunity. And there's the raid as well. So that was about as good as we could do, realistically. I'm actually impressed we got through as many questions as we could. Damn near held them at gunpoint there at the end to try to get through these. But good job, lovely co-host Ghazi.
Yeah, good job, DM. I think we had like 95% questions completely taken in the community. I feel like we did what we could to make sure the community got their voices heard as well. So I hope you guys that were watching enjoyed it. I hope you guys got most of your questions answered at least. And yeah, no, thank you, DM. It's been lovely working with you for over a year now, and we got more coming. So I'm very happy with it. Especially the ending, dude. I would not have been able to do that with someone else. Like, that was so smooth.
I had to rapid fire through. We literally had like over 30 questions left. You guys we had 30 questions left, and we were over by 15 minutes. So I'm like, I have to, reel them in. There.
Yeah. We were like deleting messages. Okay, let's just get this one out. And we're like, okay, you want to take it from here? Okay, move that one up. Let's prioritize these. Go.
Yeah, good job on the document there in the middle. But that was great, man. My birthday's tomorrow, so that was a lovely birthday present to be able to host this too. So sometimes it's a little surreal being able to do all that, but
that's awesome.
That's it. I mean, we did. All right, boys, it's a wrap. GG's. Thanks everyone for being here. I got nothing but love for y'all. Appreciate it. Thanks for everyone watching, restreaming, and to my co-host and all the people generating questions. And I know there's plenty of streamers and stuff out there with other questions. We tried to get to as many of them as we could, boys. So till next time, I suppose.
Templar, bro. If they add in Templar, bro, like, imagine I could go be me and McConnell. We could go and do a fucking see if he wants to do a
Audio
level.
now.
Like I'm warrior.
Hello, everybody. So
He's
here we
Templar?
are.
Dude, that
Let's
would be
just
wild.
Real quick, now that we have the audience here, I'm
Okay,
going to
here we
have Jonathan one more time say something real quick, just to make sure they can hear us well, and we'll get feedback from the chat.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, game director on Path of Exile 2.
Thanks, sir. Mark.
He said that.
Hi,
so many
I'm Mark.
times.
Hello, this is me speaking, and I didn't want to say the same thing he said.
It's fine, you can.
All right, and then
Chaos res. Oh god. Okay, there's cold res. There's lightning res. And there's fire res. Good. Perfect. Dump. Where did I just put this? Auras? Soul core? Uh-oh. Here. Okay. Solo Witch Hunter build? Nope. Okay, so how fucked are we? If we put this on. Just as fucked, right? So we lose some strength. We lose a little bit of everything with this helm right now. But still. Oh, 10 minutes. New 10-minute timer for the jewel sale. Thief, thanks for the prime sub. This is a full unique build. Yep. Do you have any tips for the 4th ascend? Yep, get some relics. Familiarize yourself with the mechanic. Learn from each run. Get better every time, and eventually you will succeed. Or just buy a carry. Save up 40x and 50x and buy a carry. Okay, where is the gear here? These boots go on. Now. Cold res basically capped, so we're not even gonna do all res soul cores. We're gonna do fire res runes, I guess. Right? For here, for sure. Helmet also. And I mean, everywhere. We are out of fire res. Uh-oh. Guys, this is tragic. I have to relog and buy a fire res rune. Okay. How to get better performance. Turn your graphics down or upgrade your hardware. There you go. How much is this gonna set me back? 20x? What? Oh. No. It's 20 runes for an X. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. Okay, I'll buy some of the other ones as well. Glacier. 11 to 1. Why is this so much cheaper? Or why is it twice as expensive? Sorry. And then was it Lightning Storm rune? Alright, 3x well spent. Should I buy a Giga Ascension once I have 3k EHP? Fire res. Right? Fire or lightning? Fire. Or fuck the damage and I put this on and rest cap. We lose like 30 strength. That might actually be the play. Guys, that's not the play. We need the int. Okay. I mean, that's solvable, right? With the bathing nodes. I mean, we are losing some stats, but yeah, it's not too bad, I think. Who did one? Can we fix this issue a little bit? Like little int here. Oh, look, I have my build back. That's all it took? Hell yeah. Okay. Who did one? This is not cool, man. I can't get out. Guys, I'm gonna need a temporalis. I'm actually stuck. I can't get out. What the fuck? That's so toxic. Who did one? I was not expecting that from you. Okay. What? Well, just keep rolling. Okay, I'm still not gonna have damage, but you know, it's fine. Yo. He's forcing. Is it time for the Astromantis for the campaign? Uh-huh. Sure. Yeah. Oh, I should put on a belt. Book of Specialization. Wait, is this actually a bazooka tank? Yeah, okay. Wrong character. Hey, it's me, bazooka tank. Wrong character. This one. Loading. Okay, let's see. Oh no! I can't. Mm-hmm. 20 stats, 20 losing here, 16 int. Mm-hmm. Isn't it better if you just get isn't it more value if you get a stat corruption on an 80? Like 15 int or something. Probably half the price of this. It's a POV angle. It's really good. Okay, yeah, I mean, if you have two good attribute rings with the int and all attribute, then that's gonna be more value to get a higher percent roll. Yeah. Alright. Oh yeah, it's cutting the flat damage too. Drew. Oh, too late. Hey, what's random nerd? Beasley on beats. Thanks for the prime song. Alright, here we go. Back to the monkey.
My fellow exiles? Wow. Two of the largest Path of Exile 2 streamers and content creators just interviewed the game's director duo, Jonathan Rogers and Mark Roberts. Alongside this interview, Grinding Gear Games just dropped all their intentions with Path of Exile 2 just over 5 weeks into its early access launch, and the changes and additions are massive. This video goes over both sets of information, gathering all the best highlights from the Darth microtransaction and Gazi TV interview of the Grinding Games devs, and the most important news from the actual GPG post and video. Plus, I have some exciting plans to announce at the end of the video. As always, sources and timestamps are in the description below. But before we get talkative, if you enjoy this type of content, tap the like button and give the subscribe one a boost. There's a bunch more PoE2 videos like this, interviews, and lore dives on the way. We just hit 50,000 subscribers this week. The goal is 100,000 by the end of 2025. Log in, exiles! We got this. Thank you. I'd like to begin with a list of things that were not discussed in either the interview or the video by Grinding Gear Games. Real money trading or the latest drama, the Trials of Ascension in any great detail, any future content additions like the Templar or Druid, any incoming nerfs with the next patch or League, complete shutdowns or PC freezes occurring, or the next Path of Exile 1 League. Now, let's dive into all the best information from the video from Grinding Gear Games themselves. First of all, this is not a big nerf patch. The big balance patch shall come when the economy resets and there's a new league, which will be coming as soon as possible. From the way they worded that, I really believe it's coming sometime in February. As for the changes coming this week, they are working on things that they knew needed to be fixed ASAP, and they knew they could get those changes out. Well, this week, we begin with endgame mapping. All maps are now more rewarding as a base. There was a complete density and drop rebalance. Lost Towers now have 4 more tile sets, and the old one was reworked to be a lot better too. More bosses will now be encountered in the Atlas. The 1 in 4 rate was not actually working properly before because some maps couldn't spawn bosses. It's much better now, and there is now a boss tablet, which is phenomenal. Visual clarity improvements on rare monster mods and terrains are also huge in the end game. Basically, every single explosion received a rework, as did the pesky volatile plant modifier. Additionally, load times have been drastically reduced on the world map and the Atlas, which affects the entire game and is great. The zoom of the Atlas is much better. You can zoom out a lot more now, and now biomes are listed on maps so you can see where you are actually traveling to. This matters a lot for some Atlas passive tree nodes. And those improvements were just for the Atlas. There's still stuff coming for the leagues and pinnacles, which we'll talk about right now. Basically, all league mechanics need a lot more work, but these are the immediate changes coming in. You will now receive 60% more omens from rituals. Expedition shops now have improved rarity of items, and there's just a bunch more that's being done here. Now, with pinnacles and pinnacle content, citadels start spawning much closer to the center of the Atlas. You now have lights that show you where citadels are in fog. And now for the Arbiter of Ash, you get 6 attempts versus him on the lowest tier, and you have less attempts the higher in tier the fight goes. All W changes, and I think I'll actually be able to overcome the Arbiter of Ash with some practice. Items also received quite a few changes. There are massive unique item buffs and changes. Some people have been making fun of these buffs because, for example, there was a mace that now has a much higher damage multiplier on it, but it has 20% reduced attack speed. There's a lot of changes going on here. We'll have to see at the end of the day whether or not they feel really good. There are also less bad mods on high-level rare items. and there's a rescaling of how tier 5 items remove certain mods, because there were some bugs going on there, some balance concerns too, and that has all been fixed. So you should be able to find better rare items now. Additionally, there were lots of monster changes, just an absolute ton. They listed a few examples, such as the Silver Fist boss getting nerfed, the big gorilla that's able to one-tap people, less grenades from the miners, and a bunch of other stuff changed here, along with the other rare monster changes we talked about earlier. Then there's a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, like the fact that consoles are getting loot filters this week. There are some minor changes to armor happening. There's a bunch of other tiny little changes occurring across the game. And like I said at the top, there's not a ton of balance changes happening because they want to wait to make those changes for the next big reset, which should be happening very, very, very soon. Oh, one I missed, charms. You can now actually see how many charm uses you have, and they have an effect when they are used, so you actually see when they are triggered. I really had no idea when a charm was triggered before. Now we will be able to see that. The patch notes should be coming soon, and the patch is coming this week. Remember, this is 0.1.1. 0.2 probably is going to introduce new classes, new content, and the like. Let's move on to the highlights of the interview with Darth Microtransaction and Ghazi. Let's lead it off with the fact that they weren't truly excited about all these changes that they just made. They're excited about the future content they are addressing and introducing to the game. These changes happening right now are just making sure players are having fun playing the game, and they're really just looking at the concerns that players had during that first 5-week period of the early access. These are things that ideally would have already been fixed with the game, but they weren't, and with the help of the players, they now are. So that's good. Moving on to the map buffs, there's about 30% more monsters on average and 30% more items from normal maps now, and extra content is less necessary to progress. They all know that Breach is insane right now, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be nerfing it really a whole bunch. They do want map sizes and layouts to be an Axis players use, but they know large maps needed way more monsters, packs, and rare items than they had before. Large maps should feel much better right now. Building on this, they had a bit of a map layout discussion and whether or not Augury and Mire deserve to be in the game alongside stuff like Savannah. And yes, they think they should, but there's obvious problems with them, such as the levers in Augury that are objectively bad, and they are being fixed ASAP. Mark Roberts also noted that these maps that players might universally hate might just spawn the most rare monsters, or the most monsters in terms of raw numbers, so there's a lot of testing that needs to be done by the community. You might go from hating Mire to absolutely loving it and building something, a character, that will be able to clear it with ease because it might have the most juiceable content in the game. Then they spoke a little bit about Waystone sustain and whether or not it was a problem. In their own minds and in their offices, they haven't really seen this as a problem, but lots of players has brought it up as one. They're thinking that the baseline changes and improvements to maps and the addition of finding more bosses should basically get rid of this, but if it continues to be a problem, they will look more into it. Mark Roberts went absolutely beast mode and said, well, I went from T1 Waystones to T15 Waystones in 32 total map runs. He really is in a different universe, and he is quite the professional Path of Exile 2 player. They then discussed whether or not every league should feel necessary or fun to interact with, and of course they should. And they iterated that each of these leagues or endgame systems should provide some sort of character or crafting power that is abnormal, and it's increasing your strength in some unique way. They give Expedition as an example. It doesn't have anything like that right now, and it should in the future. They're currently working on it. They didn't reveal what that should be. All future endgame content systems should be able to have stuff like anointing your amulet currently with delirium and the like. They really want to make sure that investing into these different content types is worthwhile and fun. The group then moved into a different discussion on pinnacles and citadels, talking about how all pinnacles will get those increased encounter attempts. Just right now, the Arbiter of Ash was the one that they could get into this soonest patch. In future patches, other pinnacle bosses like Zesht will have these increased chances. on the lowest difficulty levels. Then they, of course, had to bring up the Citadel corpse theories, where the positioning of the corpse and the Lost Towers told you where to go for the Citadels. No, none of that was true. It's crazy, and it makes Jonathan Rogers want to insert something like this into a game so players can go absolutely wild theorizing what's going on. But it wasn't actually in the game. It was just pure RNG, and you needed to be a certain amount from spawn for Citadels to begin appearing. It doesn't sound like the further you are from spawn, the greater chance they have of appearing. It just sounds like you need to be beyond a certain threshold. They let this awesome piece of news loose. Controller and PC UI swap is coming very soon for people who use controller, meaning you should be able to dynamically play on your controller and then use mouse and keyboard with ease if you are playing on PC. Darth then asked if they received any surprising player feedback. Jonathan said they were worried about things being broken, but the level of brokenness surprised especially Mark. They knew things were going to happen that were absolutely crazy, but they found it especially sad the first few times people fought the Arbiter of Ash, which is the pinnacle encounter currently in Path of Exile 2 Early Access. It wasn't a normal fight, a 1 to 3 minute encounter. Instead, people just deleted the Arbiter in a few seconds, and they hated that. They then went into a discussion on mid-league nerfs and the fact that they didn't see the changes they made before the holiday break as mid-league nerfs, and they don't really want to do those. They made those changes with the intent of fixing some stability issues that were going on, and the changes they made still left the build in a very powerful state from their perspective. But as we saw, many players disagreed with that sentiment. They ended this discussion saying they really only want to do big balance changes when there is a large balance patch and a league reset, which should be coming very, very soon. Ghazi and DM then asked about whether or not there was a data breach at Grinding Gear Games because there's all this hacking discussion that's been going on, and yes, someone had access to an admin account on the Grinding Gear Games website. It was a social engineering breach. An admin account had a Steam account associated with it. They didn't realize it was attached, and it got compromised through Steam support. 66 accounts per their account were compromised. They are still investigating it though. There will be a post from Grinding Gear Games about it with all the relevant info. They screwed up here with security stuff on this particular admin account. They've added multiple measures so that this just doesn't happen again. But for two-factor authentication for regular players, it is very tricky to set up everything involved, especially when someone inevitably loses one part of their 2FA. All support accounts immediately are getting 2FA. Now, I do have a little bit more to say here because it doesn't seem to be just isolated to 55 people, at least all the reports, unless people are making it up. It seems like lots and lots of people are having these hacking issues, and they didn't address it beyond this single breach. And we're going to learn more about it soon. Maybe they will address the greater hacking concern going on then, but for now, they have not. Ghazi then tried to get some information about a roadmap or a cadence for releases in early access. All Jonathan said was that they are rushing for the next big patch because they want to do an economy reset, and they cannot do one unless they have substantial new content within. Whether that's a new act, whether that's a new class, a new weapon class, we just have to wait and see. Nothing was confirmed here. Then they brought up the big magic find discussion in Path of Exile 2, and Grinding Gear Games said the PoE 2 formula is the same as the PoE 1 formula in terms of diminishing returns. The only difference is what magic find gives you. And their argument for it being fine is that they're not doing a ton of quantity mods and the like they did in Path of Exile 1, getting it to that egregious state. Right now, nothing is changing with Magic Find. Absolutely nothing. They will investigate it more, but they did not have a formulated opinion on it yet. And as we get a little deeper into the interview, there were some more things that they did not have formulated opinions on. Hopefully, in good time, they will be able to speak on these issues with some more oomph. Oh, speaking of one of those issues, Darth Microtransaction brought up the fact that mace skills do not feel good, and Jonathan asked when that really became a problem. And DM responded, basically the end game, and Jonathan agreed. It's an end game problem here with the speed at which monsters are attacking with all the on-death effects, and they're hoping that a lot of their changes kind of destroys that problem. But they all still want to further investigate the strength and speed of mace skills. When Jonathan responded like that, chat absolutely freaked out. They thought, oh my goodness, no, there's tons of changes needed with maces. We'll have to see what happens here or what happens when more melee skills are introduced. They also touched on the fact that there was not a lot of armor changes going on, but more are probably incoming. There's just very minor buffs coming in this upcoming patch. There was a small discussion on charms needing improvements, such as more slots or more slots gained from non-belt items. That means more slots from the tree, more slots from other areas, because right now, scaling charms is very, very difficult. Then they dove into crafting in Path of Exile 2 and essentially said, yeah, we are on the slot machine line of the crafting debate, as opposed to the fully deterministic method of crafting that many want, but they are open to adding more ways to change items into the game in the future, especially as more systems are added, especially those historic systems from Path of Exile 1. Then they got into a discussion about league mechanics or just endgame content in maps like Breach and Delirium. They acknowledged that Breach is currently an outlier, but not much is really happening to it. The monster density is probably a little too high, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be making changes to it. Mark went into a bit of a tangent on how he thought that predictable stuff like Breach, like Ritual, should be juiceable well beforehand, and you should be able to really lean on that content in the maps, whereas unpredictable content like strong boxes and essences, they don't need to be juiceable, but they should be really exciting when you find them, and they currently do not meet the mark there, so they are receiving buffs in this upcoming patch and probably in the future, especially strong boxes. They really think they failed on strong boxes, and they are right. Okay, then they discussed the introduction to the Path of Exile 2 endgame and how people progress and the speed of that progression and the flipping of the switch from campaign to endgame. This was my favorite part of the interview. Grinding Gear Games are not happy with the Path of Exile 2 endgame quest system right now. It's a larger thing to solve and work on. They don't like do 10 T1 maps, do 10 T2 maps, and so on and so forth. They actually want to make it objective-based like the campaign, and they think that will greatly improve it. Here are the few areas where they think it is faltering. First, the way progression feels isn't as good as PoE1 in some ways. Like, the feel of progress just isn't quite right. They want actual bosses in those points as part of the narrative. You know, when you're entering T6 maps for the first time or T11 maps for the first time, they want unique boss fights, not random bosses that you always fight when you are getting there. That should be a part of the game. Additionally, there's no tutorialization of endgame, which is something, out of the interview here, something I really pushed for. It sucks that it didn't make it into the game. If they could introduce a great endgame tutorial, I think that more and more players would be playing and sticking with Path of Exile 2, and I really hope that is near the top of their endgame list before the launch of the actual game. Then they also acknowledge that you can progress through tiers too fast for your character and not get the gear upgrades that you need, which then causes you to do higher tier waystones and die to them and fall behind in progress and make you feel really frustrated. So they basically need to smooth out that progression there. Then they ended this discussion talking about campaign to endgame feels like there's a switch that is flipped, and they have to smooth it out. And the big problem here, which Mark acknowledged, is the fact that people who understand ARPGs and understand the game are able to turn their characters into gods far too quickly, and the people who don't know how to do that basically are left behind and they have no idea what to do and they are just getting rolled over. They have a difficult bit of game design to solve here. I really hope they can do it because I really want the feeling of Path of Exile 2 endgame to be distinct from Path of Exile 1. They did avoid the speed creep question here. If I get the chance to interview the devs, I'm definitely pushing on this. Then they went into the one portal and XP penalties and whether or not they would be changing. Right now, the pinnacles are now going to get more portals, but regular maps are not. And they have acknowledged that there's a lot of negative repercussions to failing maps, and maybe they need to compromise in one area of failure, but the portals might be last, and they want to keep the one and done right now because they felt like in Path of Exile 1, you never really had that fear of failing maps, which I definitely did. And in Path of Exile 2, my goodness, it is ever present. That was the real last big topic that they addressed. Everything else now, everyone, is just going to be rapid fire. They acknowledge that bleed is supposed to be applied past energy shield, and it currently cannot be. That is a bug. They talked about ascendancy swapping, and Jonathan basically looked to Mark and just motioned, this is on you, man. And Mark does not like being able to swap it, and he wants to keep it the way it currently is. That's obviously the debate that is going on. It's between Jonathan and Mark and some other developers at the office. Jonathan is on the side of re-rolling, but it's not changing right now. They do not think you should be able to one-shot pinnacle bosses on the first time. They think those fights should last between 1 and 3 minutes of actual combat, but you should be able to get to the point, perhaps, where you can one-shot those pinnacle bosses like the Arbiter of Ash. Like we mentioned earlier, it made them depressed when people got to the Arbiter and just trivialized the fight. They briefly touched on people struggling to get their last set of ascendancy points, and they responded that, yes, we want it to be a significant goal, and they don't really know whether or not the average player should be able to obtain it because the average player doesn't even make it to maps or midway through maps. They do want to expand map objectives to be beyond just slaying rare monsters and the bosses, but it takes time to get that right. They like the endgame content trees the way they are, but the core Atlas tree shall be upgraded. There will be a Waystone stash tab added ASAP. On minion body blocking, they did try to make it with minion phasing. It sucked. They're working on a better solution, but they didn't really give one in this particular interview. Spectres are coming very, very soon, so I'm guessing they're coming in the February or March new league reset. A search on the Atlas is incoming. The Tornado Bird and the Trial of Chaos is being nerfed. Magic and rare monsters will have some more identifiers on them, so you know if something is magic or rare. Salvaging flasks should come in the game soon. They might add checkpoints to maps. They have to debate that. They are perhaps adding a gem cutting screen, so you don't need to use an uncut gem to see all the gems available to you. The Gambler in your hideout is coming back. It was removed because there was a last minute big bug. The Venom quest reward reselection is incoming too. Movement speed on boots as an implicit is not going to come. They like the chase mod that movement speed is on boots. Body blocking in co-op is not right, but they're unsure what to do here. They probably might change the player size so players treat other players as smaller sizes as compared to how monsters treat players. And finally, the MTX Path of Exile 1 to PoE 2. Everything should be in the game by the end of early access. As for a cadence on the content moving right now, they cannot give one. It is a lot more work than they thought it would be, and they have multiple teams involved right now. And that was it. That was all the highlights from the interview and from the video. I tried to keep this as factual as possible and not insert my own opinion into this particular video. Don't worry though, you're going to get that video later this week and on my live streams, which you can participate in if you would like to. I would love to see you there on Twitch or on YouTube. Thank you again to DM and Ghazi and Jonathan and Mark for doing this excellent interview. And as for the announcement, I should also be getting an interview in February and talking with Jonathan about the state of Path of Exile 2, and maybe it'll be right around the time the Druid and Huntress release. So there will probably be a brand new set of questions. I'll make a dedicated video on this later when we get closer to the date, and it is 100% confirmed. But I reached out, I'm pushing for it, and it looks like it's going to happen, which is absolutely awesome. That'll be interview number 4, which is pretty cool. As always, thank you dearly for watching. Tap the like button, subscribe for much more Path of Exile 2 content, and watch this video right now on the ridiculous state of Path of Exile 2 early access just 1 month in. My fellow exiles, stay sane.
For any of you that missed this, Grinding Gear Games had a godly video, godly announcement about a huge patch coming this week. I initially thought it was going to be loaded with nerfs, and that mega balance patch is actually coming later with like a new reset and an economy. They're just going to focus on improving the game. And then they had a 2-hour Q&A. This is every question that was asked with every answer in me paraphrasing Grinding Gear Games. So let's just rip through this as fast as possible. The patch is coming this week. There will be no new league or no new economy yet. That will be later with a huge mega patch. There are quick fixes that they could get done. They said they got it all done in like 2 weeks worth of work. For the end game, it's just more rewarding everywhere. Like just like the base maps are more rewarding. The chests, the monsters. Towers now have 4 additional maps, and the existing map is a catastrophe. The hallways are too narrow. You can't see in the new room. They showed some footage of it. It looks a lot better, and it's going to be a lot more fun and more rewarding to do. There's a lot more bosses that are going to be on the maps, which are actually really nice for map progression. Tablets can now add bosses to maps. You can zoom out more. There's better visual clutter. Elite attacks. If I heard them correctly, they said elite attacks disappear and don't detonate after death. This is going to be a lot of those stupid ass on death explosions. This is maybe one of my most favorite things that I heard them say. Strongbox, expedition, ritual, all those things were buffed. For pinnacle content, the citadels, you can now see them in the fog of war, like kind of far away. So there's no more spending 2 weeks and only finding one like I did. For the pinnacle boss, the Arbiter, you can now use all 6 portals, and they said that the other pinnacle content will be able to have all 6 portals as well. They just have to code it into the game. People will be very happy about that. For the item changes, those low-level uniques that you were finding, some are really good for twink items, but a lot of them, they just said they just sucked, so they buffed a lot of them. And they changed the weighting, and you're going to get less bad affixes. So less accuracy, less life on hit or life per second, and more of the stuff that you actually want. And now you can overwrite runes, which is a super, super ultimate mega change everyone was asking for. A lot of the outlier monsters that were just destroying people have been nerfed, so you're not going to get one-shotted out of nowhere as often. And they did say in the Q&A that the tornado bird that insta one-shotted me and DM, and I believe Quinn and other people, has one of the bosses that's been fixed. Console is getting item filters. That's like the #1 thing I hear from console people. I've heard people say they literally have quit. With no item filter, they're not going to play. Well, now you get an item filter. Armor is buffed. They'll say later on, this is just a small buff. They have to like actually rework armor completely, but getting a buff for now. Charms now show the charges and when they're activated, so you can actually see what they're doing. And then there's going to be a mega balance change coming soon with a full reset and a new economy. Q&A, I'm just going to go real fast. They said, what change were they most excited to announce? And they said, the next patch will be the exciting stuff. I mean, I personally I think this patch is God tier, but they said that the next stuff, all the new stuff that they're bringing to the game is way more exciting than this one. What are they hoping for from the buffs to the endgame maps? They want the base map to be more rewarding, and they said that they like the fact that maps have different strengths. If you learn about the small maps, that's really good for completing them quickly or killing a boss quickly for moving toward a citadel, or maybe you super juice a gigantic map to like do all of your elite mechanics on. And me personally, I really like the strategy from Grinding Gear Games because it feels good in these games as you learn more about them to get more out of the game rather than every map being the same thing and it doesn't matter at all. So I like the strategy a lot, but the minimum will be a lot better. It won't be as easy to brick and it won't be as easy to run out of maps. I said, what about the shit maps like Augury and Valve Factory? They said some of the things in them are just unacceptable, like the levers, and then you can't dodge roll, and then burning ground can spawn under them. All of that stuff is terrible, and they will remove it. But they did say there needs to be variance between the maps. That way, certain builds that like smaller rooms versus the gigantic open maps that build just one shot everything. What is their opinion on the map sustain? Will the boss change? Are you making the boss changes more bosses on the maps and the bosses being able to be added to maps to help it? They said there's not sure that there's a Waystone sustained problem, but they'll take more feedback. My opinion on this is I like the fact that Waystones are important. They shouldn't be so rare that we can't play, but they shouldn't drop so often that you don't give a shit about them. I think with these changes, I think Waystones might actually be in a really good spot. So I kind of agreed with their take that after this patch, maybe there won't be a problem, but we'll just have to play it and see. What are they hoping to accomplish with Expedition? They said one problem with Expedition is it doesn't have this like unique specific thing. It gives you like crafting, but the crafting is the same that you can do anywhere else. They're going to give Expedition some actual unique feature that you can't get somewhere else to make you more powerful, but they didn't say what it was. Why did they wait to add the extra portals to the other bosses? They just said it's harder to make the portals for some of the other bosses. For example, the Breach boss, if they just put in a portal all 6 of them, it might actually let you redo the breach, which would give you extra loot, so they have to make sure that doesn't happen. They said, are the Copper Citadels actually the same spawn rate? Yes, they are. They said they ran 1 billion simulations. The Copper Citadels do spawn as often, but people keep dying to the boss's on-death explosions, and they fixed the on-death explosions, and the boss was also, they said, just too difficult relative to the other 2 bosses, so they brought it in line with the other 2. Were any of the conspiracy theories for spawning citadels true? No. And that's what I was saying. It's just all confirmation bias, and none of them were right. So that's why I didn't make a video on any of those conspiracy theories. What does less bad mods on items mean? They reiterated less accuracy, life on kill, mana on kill. But some of the best items in the game, like the tier 5 yellows, they accidentally coded that some of the best tactics were not possible to get on them. Like attack speed couldn't roll on T5 bows, which is like the best suffix. So they have fixed those impossibilities. So gear in general should be a little bit better and to craft on. And then they had a discussion about, so if you aren't familiar, in PoE 1, tier 1 is the best, and in PoE 2, tier whatever the highest tier is the best. Like T12, it changes. They said it's first of all it's the opposite of maps. So maps go 1 to 15, and 15 is the best. So it actually goes to like 18 at the top. But they don't want 1 to be the best for items and 15 to be the best for maps. Then they said if they add a new tier later in the game beyond tier 1, if they reversed it, then they'd have to redo the entire thing. My main take on this particular topic is they should have it the same between PoE 1 and PoE 2. It's so confusing that it's backwards, and I'm going to be completely honest. I thought PoE 1's was better and less confusing. Tier 1 is the best. If you add a new tier, it just becomes the new tier 1. Like, that's fine. I would rather learn that the top tier is now 250 life instead of 220 life, and just have tier 1 be the best. I think the fact that it's the opposite of maps is an absolute nothing. It's totally fine that it's the opposite of maps. I have never found that confusing. I have never heard anyone say that they have found that confusing. No matter what you do on this, I think you have to make it the same between the 2 games. The fact that they're polar opposites, I think, is the biggest problem. What else is coming to consoles? They said many more things are coming besides loot filter, but you will be able to instant swap between controller and mouse and keyboard on the UI. That's what they have coming very soon. What feedback surprised you the most from the community? They said that the damage builds that people make got way too high. People got to the pinnacle bosses and one-shot it without seeing the mechanics. I only got to fight the pinnacle boss 1 time because I couldn't find the citadels, and I did not see his mechanics. He died with my Ice Strike Monk. So that's exactly what happened to me. They, in general, in the future, they don't want to do mid-league nerfs, and the next patch might like nerf the top 10 things, but it's going to bring 50 things up. And more on the nerfing philosophy, anything truly game-breaking or causing FPS or server issues will be fixed immediately, but in general, they don't want to do mid-league nerfs. A lot of people got their accounts hacked. They wanted to know if there was a data breach and will they implement 2-factor authentication. In general, it was a big story. The answer is no. There was a Steam account attached to an admin account. Someone stole the Steam account and then got access to the admins, and then 66 accounts were hacked with some others. There was not a massive data breach. 2-factor authentication is now required with some other changes for grinding gear games employees, but they said that they may add 2FA for everybody else as well. Is there a roadmap for upcoming releases? They want to make big, juicy, impactful changes. They don't want to release a patch like every week, because then people will actually come back and play it, and then they can get data from the testing. The next big patch, though, that they said that they were very excited to release is going to be rushed. They said faster than the other, so we can expect the next mega patch soon. We're asked about the state of Magic Final. Huge topic in the community. They said it's the same formula in PoE 1, but rarity is different in PoE 2, and it impacts currencies. It doesn't literally give you more quantity, but it's like pseudo quantity, because With rarity, the currencies are affected, so it seems like you get more exalts and the quantity of exalts and divine goes up. They said that the people that really hate Magic Find is a fair take, but they didn't really agree with it. They said in general for Magic Find, they need more data. They will look deeper with more of the changes as the game gets closer to being launched. The state of warriors and maces, they said that they think the campaign is fine. The end game seems to have a problem with scaling. Their attack speed and their attack times are a problem, like they're really slow. And warriors are compared to Giga Chad builds like the Hand of Wisdom and Action scenario that's going to get nerfed. But then DM went on the attack and he said, would you agree that warriors have the worst state of everything? The worst offense, the worst defense, the worst scaling? And they both said that they actually agree. So they agree that warriors are in the worst state possible. And then they said in general, they're going to add a lot more things for maces. What about the armor problem that Kripparrian drew so much attention to? It needs more than what they're giving it. They're just giving it a small update. They're not exactly sure internally how to fix it. One of the problems is that evasion and energy shield have way better synergies with other things that make them so strong. They need to think it out a lot more, and they need a big change to armor to actually fix the entire problem. Are they changing the charm numbers? No, but they feel that charms have things wrong with them. There aren't enough charm slots, and charms are a newer thing that's really not complete. So the charm thing that they said that they're fixing earlier is just when it's being activated and how many charges you have. What about the state of crafting? It's two-slot machine, not machine, two-slot machine. And there needs to be more determinism, but exactly as they said, I'm glad they said this, you can't make it so deterministic that you can just craft whatever you want, because then you don't have a game. They'll make more changes later. What about the state of divines? Nothing much to say. It'll be fixed with more future leagues and content, because they were arguing that no one uses divines because they're only used on the stat amulet and ingenuity belts. That's only like the top 1.1% of people. But I don't think this is a big problem. I think this will just be fixed naturally as they expand the game. State of endgame mechanics. This is like strong box and essences. They said the balance is really off, and endgame just had a severe lack of testing, but the more people are playing it, they're figuring out. They said essences and strong boxes are supposed to not be known that they're coming. They're supposed to be surprises. They're supposed to be exciting. But currently they're just anti-dopamine because they suck. They're aware of that. But they do want both layers to continue in PoE 2. The mechanics that you spec into, that you place on the maps that you want to do, and the surprises within the map, they just need to be far more rewarding. How does the transition from the campaign to the end game feel for players? What data are they seeing? They said players are not very powerful in the beginning. They need to make it way better and more fun in the beginning of the end game, rather than just complete tier 1 maps. They need to help new players a lot more. The narrative just ends and people are lost with absolutely no direction. They said this was a major focal point that they're going to change about the end game. The state of one portal mapping, it hurts new players because new players don't have a good build. They don't know what they're doing. When they die, they lose the map. They have to redo it. But the blasters have good builds. They don't really die as much. And even if they die, they'll just keep playing anyway. So it's like very one-sided. And how do they feel about XP on death? They want to make deaths matter. So they said they would prefer to make a bunch of other changes rather than changing the single portal. But too many death penalties currently occur at the same time. You lose the map, you lose all the currency laying on the map if you haven't picked it up, and you also lose the XP. They said in general, the start of maps should be easier and the difficulty should ramp up. Again, I mentioned this in the live stream. I'm just going to mention it one more time because I shouldn't say this, but it just pisses me off. This is the feedback that I said that I think grinding gear games should do to help new players, and a bunch of PoE elitists said I was a piece of shit, and if you make the start of maps or Act 1 in the campaign easier, then you're just ruining the game. It brought a big smile up to my face to see grinding gear games say that this is exactly how it should be to help new players. So, yeah, I'll stop there. How do you feel about ailment application in PoE 1 versus PoE 2? So the ailment application is based upon the magnitude of the hit and in PoE 2, and they say that they really like that. And they actually really like the asymmetry, like Hammer of the Gods being really good at applying an ailment, whereas something really fast attacking might not be. They said in PoE 1 they fixed this and they balanced the entire game by adding like ailment modifiers or coefficients or whatever. And they said they would prefer to keep going with something similar like they have in PoE 2. In general, I agree with that. I don't mind that there's asymmetry in the game. It makes the game interesting. There just needs to be choices within the asymmetry. It can't just be all Hammer of the Gods. Ascendancy swapping. They would prefer that it's locked in and ultra important, but many people feel completely the opposite way and feel that you should be able to switch it. They said that this is not a hill that they want to die on. They believe that was the exact quote. So it sounds like as long as the community keeps really complaining about it, then they will allow it. It sounds like from the sound of it, it sounded like it's probably gonna change. Should pinnacle bosses be one-shottable? They said no, you should have 1 to 3 minutes of actual skilled combat, which means not the phasing, not the dialogue, not the RP. You should be playing for at least 1 minute of skilled combat before you should be able to kill a boss. The 7th and 8th Ascendancy points are a hot topic because they're very difficult to acquire, and they asked, are they supposed to be this difficult? And they said, yes. They are supposed to be very challenging, an endgame thing to get your final 8th Ascendancy. So a very casual, let's say non-skilled or low-time player, it sounds like they will not be expected to get their 8th Ascendancy point in a league. Are they going to change the core Atlas tree? They said many changes will be coming, and their words were the current core Atlas tree, which is the endgame tree, feels boring and flat. Map tab when? As soon as possible. They're building it right now. Predictive versus lockstep networking? They haven't looked at it yet. Terrain obstruction being worked on? Yes. What about all the crashes? They're looking into the crashes, but they said that it's not so easy to fix, and they said they might even turn on a mode where they can track what you're doing if you're getting the crashes. It will lower your frame rate a little bit, but it'll help them solve it immediately. If they implement it, I'll make a quick video and I'll tell you, hey, if you want to help grinding your games fix all the crashes, turn this on, and I'll tell you when it's fixed. Minions being blocked in doorways. This is a major problem that they said this. It's a major problem that impacts a lot of people. Passability doesn't work. They tried it and it made the minions play way worse. They need a very smart solution. They don't know what it is yet. They have tried everything obvious, nothing works. But one thing they are going to change is minions that die in the distance should respawn instantly. Minions don't dodge major attacks, especially damages over time. You're supposed to be able to, the way that you are able to keep your minions alive isn't good enough. They will do a better job in the future. Minions become slowed with debuffs when you get slowed. Is that intended? No, they'll fix it. The tooltips for minions don't work, they will fix it. When are they adding specters? Fairly soon. The other things they were saying like really soon, so this fairly soon is probably more like Blizzard soon, like not very soon. Search feature, is the search feature coming on the Atlas? Yes. Tornado bird? Nerf. Yeah, after it already killed me in DM. Well, whatever. Auction house, nothing to announce right now. Accessibility for red-green color blindness. They want to fix it in the game. They don't want to add a mode for red-green color blindness. So they have some people that they will test it with red-green color blindness and just fix it for everybody. Visibility on rare blue mobs. They were vehemently against adding a glow for the rare and blue mobs. They literally called it cancer in games. They are going to work on it and solve it a different way. What about the visuals in co-op? Can you disable the visuals for your teammate? They said they will not add an option, but they can make engine fixes that just make it automatically better. Can you disenchant flasks for quality? They will add it. Are they going to add checkpoints and maps? That's not a terrible idea. What about seeing the gems before you cut them? They'll think about it. Gambler in the Hideout. It was originally in the Hideout. Then they found an exploit 10 minutes before the game launched. They removed it. They'll add it back. Venom Quest, you can't reselect the rewards. They'll add it. They'll let you reselect it. Movement speed as an implicit on boots. They said they don't like this take. Movement speed will stay on boots. They like how it is right now. Can you ever customize the UI? It will never be like WoW where you can change everything. But if you have a really good UI change or a slider that you really need, they might add it. Body blocking in co-op, something is not right about co-op. They have like the wrong size of the players relative to others, but they're not going to give you passability through others. When are the microtransactions fully moving from PoE 1 to PoE 2? All of them will be done by the end of early access. If they said it's way harder to move them over than you would think or than they thought it would be. So that's my 100-mile-an-hour, 2.5 hours condensed into whatever that was. 10 minutes of explaining everything that Grinding Your Games is doing, but I want to reiterate something. They said they did this entire patch in 2 weeks, and they said somewhere right here what was the most exciting thing that they wanted to announce. They said it's in the next patch, so not even any of the stuff that we had today. So to me, this is not only a godly change for Path of Exile 2 today, it honestly makes me really, really excited for the next patch. And one more thing that I wanted to say is I was completely wrong. I didn't think Grinding Gear Games should do this, but I was really expecting them to just nerf everything today and just crucify everything. They didn't do that at all. They took what I think is a much smarter approach. They made the game a lot more fun, and they're saving all the fixes in conjunction with a major balance patch, whatever it's going to be, I have no idea, next month. And that's the best of both worlds. Everybody's happy right now, and then when you do all the nerfs in the next patch and you have a new economy thing, people will forget about it because you made the game better, and because there'll probably be a lot of new cool things that'll just make them forget about it. So their tactics here, their strategies, it's not just the patch itself, it's the thinking here is very, very strong. My confidence in Grinding Gear Games was already pretty high. My confidence improves significantly with this patch and with this showcase there. By the way, I will say one more thing. In general, I thought DM and Ghazi did a very, very good job. They asked a shitload of questions. They weren't messing around. They honestly didn't even let the devs off so easy on some of the topics. It was a great performance by them as well. It's a good time to be a PoE 2 fan, I guess. Hi everyone, it's Rax. I've been blasting Path of Exile 2 since it came out a couple of weeks ago. I think I'm coming up on 200 hours played. I've done 4 full campaign playthroughs. I finally done one deathless, and I played a couple of characters up into the end game to about, I would say, T10 maps-ish. And I finally think I've played enough.
I wish I could stun them like together. That would be very helpful. Am I a bit scared of dying? Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I'm a bit more surprised how well we're holding our own here.
I know, is the...
One of the best, if not the best staffs on the entire hardcore trade league.
33, so I can go down to 28. Yeah, there's actually not that many options here. Oddly. I mean, there's stuff near CI worth taking, but when you take CI, there's like 15 other nodes you have to auto-include. I have a build for galvanic shards, but it's probably not that good, because
to hand out these essential supplies that so many Angelinos are dropping off by the truckload. This bird's eye view here of this FEMA command center where they are building a virtual tent city just next to the Malibu Country Mart near the Malibu Farmers Market land there. It is a massive lot where they are going to be here for the long haul, bringing in responders from all over the place. As you know, workers are coming in from all over the country and will be here for an extended period of time. But this just gives you an idea of just, this is about as close as they could possibly get all the way out here to the country.
You can walk around, get your stuff, and come over.
What can I... Until next time.
consume. Time to consume. follow the river to nowhere.